Hi guys, good evening. I'll wait for a minute to get into the game, but this is since the only NYQ lecture which I'll be taking for the essay. What I'll do today is I'll pick up top three micro themes of the essay mains, which we've figured out from 2021 to 2025, whatever were the most recurring topics, and I'll break down one micro theme to the core, like as much as I would do in my paid lectures or in my Smash essay classes, which start tomorrow. And even though this document is publicly available, this is essay micro themes, and the framework. I mean, you would be knowing that the framework that we use for decoding the essay topics is the TAS framework, the Hegelian dialectic method, thesis, antithesis, synthesis. But the way we study the content for such philosophical and reflective essays is through understanding what are the tensions at play, and that tensions are at play in all these kind of topics. Either a topic in your essay question is philosophical, or it is proverb or a maxim. Okay, thematic do ही आए थे, so we'll just let them be. And among the tensions which have come over the last 4 5 years, these are the top three most recurring ones. So force versus influence has almost come every year, which basically means that in any of your section A or section B, you'll get one topic which would be about the tension between force and influence, hard power versus soft power, something like that. Okay, immediate gain versus long term gain, something around that. And my contention, keh lo, ya my point is this, that for a very successful UPSC essay attempt, a very successful meaning 140 plus, you only have to prepare one essay from each of these 11 micro themes, which have come, let's say, at least 2 times. There are other micro themes also which have come abhi bas ek bar. So if you have time, you can prepare some from this. But since you only have to attempt 2 questions across section A, section B, you only have to focus on these 11 types of tensions. And these 11 types of tensions are unfolding in almost similar fashion across the essays that are being asked. So we'll go into each of them properly. But let's say just talk about the force versus influence one. So, hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. Poets are the unacknowledged legislators of the world. The empires of the future will be the empires of the mind. And fourth topic is the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. These are essay, actual PYQs which have come across 2021 2025 के area में. Now, out of you guys live here, those of you who are writing for 2026, just do a hands up. People who've joined from the Letter and Spirit community, quick show of hand. Because what we're going to do now in the next half an hour or so is we will try to understand how do you break this tension into actual paragraphs. Okay? How do you feel the real dilemma, the real tension, not just force versus influence, not something which you can. Asli tension na is equivalent to an ethical dilemma. In ethical dilemma, you have to choose between one right and another right. It's not a choice between one wrong and a right. That's an easy choice. True tensions in life are also where you want both the things. So it's like a tension of wants. I want this and I want that also. It's akin to I want to have my cake and eat it too. You know that you would have heard this proverb, right? You want to save the cake, but you also want to taste it. And so many of such things where Hindi में से बोलते हैं सबको मुकम्मल जहां नहीं मिलता, and you can go ad infinitum on. दो wants हैं तुम्हारी which are described in the question. You have to feel it to your bones that yeah, this is a tragic want. I want it, but I understand I cannot have both. So which one of them is better? What we will do as we go in this session, and I'll take this micro theme like in depth in today's session. And what I'll do forward, Age, we'll discuss these 4 PYQs which have come, and I'll actually tell you what's the heart of this essay. Then I will give you quotes which can possibly become a question in this year or next. So that's the NYQ part. And then I'll give you further quotes which are not given by leaders or thinkers or politicians across the centuries, but which echo the same sentiments. So as you finish one loop, one micro theme, how do the tension play across these 4 PYQs? I mean, what are the thinkers and leaders and politicians and army strategists of their time who would have said the same thing in different words? What have they said? Because that could be another NYQ, another possible questions. And then if I have to, brighten up my essay, if I have to just spruce up something really nice there, is there any one-liner that I can use and then explain? ठीक है, तो ये 4 चीजें will make your essay denser, and people who want very quick fix, like because mains is just around the corner, you have what, less than 80 days or so, you can use these things directly. An expanded version of this is what we're going to study in smash essay classes. Okay, so as and when you understand things, as and when mentos की the proverbial बत्ती जले, तो बताना क्या समझ में आया, कहाँ पे should I go slow, should I go fast. अब उससे पहले basic theory. So there's this thing about hard power versus soft power, right? And like on a default zone, you will understand hard power is basically military, something which can be seen, tangible, felt, traded, shown. Okay, you can get scared about it or from it. And soft power, for the lack of a better example, I think most of us would understand soft power as K soaps, or both Korean dramas, and also the Kyoki Saas Bhi Kabhi Bhuti era K soaps. And then diplomacy, the yoga day, international yoga day, and all these things, which by the very example, when I say them, they appear to be like very either insignificant, or you're not able to place its exact value in time, right? So on the face of it, the hard power versus soft power debate looks like completely lopsided towards the hard power. You need hard power. You need a force that you can see and be scared of. Soft power is something like like movie diplomacy, like you invite artists from one land to another, and we've seen in real politics that these things fail. In fact, there's a famous quote by Machiavelli in his very famous book called The Prince. He says that it is better to be feared than to be loved if you cannot be both. So this is Machiavelli. This is, if I were to give you a complete opposite of this, supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting, or hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. That would be Machiavelli. But Machiavelli ki quote comes with a context, with the condition apply. He says that if you can do both, then do both. But if you cannot do both, which means if you don't have enough time, then just go for the brute force. ठीक है, अभी तक हमें लगता है कि hard power always wins. This is not a tension. I mean, not much of a tension to grapple with. The true tension comes when you realize that the power that you can see, which is the hard power, is something that you can resist. The power that you cannot see is something you cannot resist, right? And by the way, definition. So rulers, whoever rule, once you understand their policies, once you understand their philosophy, then as a janta or as another antagonist, you can make up your mind and actually plan or strategize against him. Okay, if you don't like, against him or her, if you do not like. So something which is visible will have a resistance because it's out there to be seen. But invisible power, your subconscious cues, those things which take time and maybe years and decades to grow, they take a hold of your psyche. And it's very difficult to understand how far that manipulation has gutted you before you wake up to it. And because it's invisible, that is the reason you cannot fight against it. That is the reason that's a much more powerful, a much more long-term impactful way of controlling a mind, a country, a society, whatever, right? So you understand soft power, which is being put out as a tension in the force versus influence, वो ये है. It's not that simple soft power की movie दिखा दो, just have good songs, just parlay, books from here to there. Nothing. It's not that. That comes in a very downstream, a much more diluted version of what a soft power could be. Okay. अब इसमें एक और next level की dichotomy आती है. All of us want a visible power. Symbols act as, military and all these things act as a visible power. Okay. All of us want that. It's not enough that we assert power, we also want to show the power. We also want to be visibly there. But the moment you make it visible, you can be resisted. On the other hand, that thing which endures is invisible. You would have heard about deep state actors. You would have heard about something which is deep down in your psyche, your Freudian slips when they happen. But because it's invisible, it does not get the credit. So it's a very conscious call as a ruler or, as a leader. If you want a visible power, you obviously will be feared. It's faster, you can effectuate change abhi, here and now, but you can be resisted as easily. Versus if you want to have deeper impact, if you want to change the destiny of a country, an individual or society, for good or bad, both, completely, then boss, you have to work behind the scenes. Okay? And when you're working behind the scenes, you will not get credit for it, right? On that note, another quote that you should note down, as we speak, is coins carry the face of the king, but it's the market which defines its worth, or the market which decides its worth. Ab ye sab haven't been spoken as much outside, or these are not words of a thinker or a politician or a leader. These are some liners which you can use by yourself. That coins can carry the face of the king, which means the king can by force put his face on the coin and make sure, wherever people see, they remember him. Like, you have billboards in ORN, and you have, what, or you have teachers or, mentors who've left services, who've done this, done that. So you can see their faces, but it's the market which decides what its worth is, right? So it could be good in this year, but if they're not keeping up to it the next year, that would become a liability. They'll become the first point of inflection for any kind of revolution or any kind of change which goes, right? So that is the dichotomy. Still, the tension is that they want to be known for the good work that they've done, or for the sacrifices they apparently have made. They want to be known for that. Yet that thing doesn't sustain, or if it sustains, it takes a lot of time, and a lot of effort and a lot of hard work to just keep up at it. Ye samajh mein aa raha hai? Am I making sense to the 17 people who are there? Because now we'll segue into the actual PYQs. But the more you think like this, the better your reflections would be in your essay. If you don't think like this, you would end up only agreeing to this hand that rocks the cradle rules the world, and you will just remember a female figure, or you'll remember your early childhood impressions, and you will say, yeah, that makes sense. If you understand the depth of what this essay topic means, you will realize that it's not just the hand that rules, the hand that rocks the cradle. The hand that rocks the cradle makes a lasting impact on the person who is going to rule the world. So you understand how how powerful is this hand, how powerful and far-reaching impact of this hand can be. And now, if you are there, and if you guys are writing for 2026, give me examples, if you can remember, where someone has taken this on the positive side, sacrificed a lot, and eventually the outcome, or the leader who came about to be, they credited their mothers, or they credited their childhood society, or whatever, for whoever they are. You'll see a lot of these things happening in Oscar speeches or in leadership conferences, where people will credit their mothers mostly. Some people credit their fathers as well, but most of this credit goes to the the female gender. And you would see the flip side also happening. Sometimes when you have a very late reckoning, Star Wars agar kisi ko yaad hai to, a very late reckoning, and then that guy, or whoever the protagonist is, realizes that the seeds of this final bad behavior, or this deep-seated whatever angst or deep-seated corruption were sown much before I could even take a cognitive look at it. Okay? So this is where you kind of understand essay ko dhang se samajhna kitna important hai. I'll wait for a minute for any example on this account where something which was done in someone's childhood that you can recollect actually helped them become a better person, actually helped them take the right call at the time when the other call was easy. So think of a leader, think of something in history. Yeah, Chhatrapati Shivaji and Jijabai. You know how important Jijabai's persona is to the history. I hope I'm not wrong, but she is credited to have groomed both Shivaji and I think Sambhaji Maharaj also. I mean, people can correct me who either have history optional or have studied about it, but two decently big leaders of the Maharashtrian Renaissance, as it were. Jijabai was the influence, and this is the reason when you can credit ki even at the peak of Aurangzeb reign or whatever difficulties these two leaders were facing, they never gave up because they remembered something from their mother, or they could not give up because it was a subconscious trait in them. Swarajya was not a logical thing. It was as if like breathing or drinking water or something that deeply imbibed in your character. Whoever mentioned Jijabai, give me more. I mean, you can help the community to know more about such people. And so you have one example there. The only cost is that Jijabai wasn't much known because Shivaji and Sambhaji were more known, right? Because that's the only cons. And maybe Jijabai had no issues with that. But when leaders have issues with that, then they get corrupted. When advisors of leaders who, or the margdarshaks or whatever, when they have issues with that, when they also want to claim the limelight, then this corruption happens. Ki wo kya advice de rahe hain. Anyway, so the comparisons you can do is rulers versus pope, deep state versus obvious power, and so on and so forth. Guys, am I making sense? This should. The second topic in the same micro theme. Poets are the unacknowledged legislatures of the world. How many of you agree with this? So I hope you're understanding the drift, right? The first topic was hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. It's a largely true statement. Okay? There is not much of an antithesis here. The only antithesis point which comes is if you want to effectuate a change, or if you, both positively and negatively, if time is a constraint, then the brute force wins. Okay? If time is not the constraint, then it appears that your fundamentals, who you are deeply, what have been your grooming, that wins. Okay? Like you can take even more meta. It's, I mean, don't take it meta, but कह सकते हो कि, you're not born an empty slate. So you have impressions from past lives if you want to take it philosophical. And then so you chart your own trajectory. So even if you're born in a bad family, even if the nature versus nurture debate, nurture seems to be winning, but your nature comes and rescues you because you have impressions. I mean, Indian philosophy will talk about that, right? So you can develop this essay much, much better. Let's go to the second. So we'll do 3 more, and then I'll give you the NYQs, the possible questions which can come in this year from the same micro theme, and possible quotes that you can write which are self-created. And when you do these self kind of creations, I would advise that with this level of critical thinking, if you go to Claude and if you now tell your tension, hey, this is what I understood about this force versus influence ka tension. Now give me quotes or one-liners which I can use in my essays. That would be much, much more helpful than asking a GPT or any other platform to just write an essay or write 300 words or write 600 words. Don't do that. The thing is, because those words are not your own, they will be greatly summarized average essay summaries, but you will not remember those things unless tum ratta maar lo. But one liners which come after you've given a deeper prompt, that this is what I understand from this tension, that there is a subtler power which governs the grosser reality. और ये principle होता है life का, across these micro themes that we'll see, discovery versus creation, intuition versus logic, everything which is subtler, which you can't feel, which you cannot pinpoint to, जिसका concept नहीं बना सकते, it's a rule of life that always governs the gross. ठीक है, आप ethics में भी देखोगे ना, आपका behavior is what I can see. I think no, something like that. Behavior, then attitude, and then other things come in. करते 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 और character तक बात पहुंच जाती है, right? So your belief system. So belief, I don't know, but I can see what your behavior is. Then I point out your behavior. Then how you react to that pointing out tells me your attitude towards it. So I keep going down to the more subtler things, and I'll realize what is the ground zero of who you are as a person. In the same manner, in every micro theme, ये जो verses वाला loop है ना, it is difficult to figure out because one of these things is actually subtler. And by and large, the subtle thing always wins. So force versus influence में, influence wins long term. It just takes more time, but it wins for sure. So now we go to the second essay topic, which is poets are the unacknowledged legislatures of the world. I'll again give a second, give like half a minute. Batao, do you agree with this? Do you not agree with this? Have you seen this happening anywhere or not? And this is where your examples will come. Not all of us can think in abstraction, so we think in examples. And the skill that we need to develop is fine. The first example will come to your head, but then try to go deeper into the example, that what is the mechanism at work. Okay. So we'll just give half a second. Tell me what example comes to your mind when you realize this topic. Poets are the unacknowledged legislatures of the world. This is also the topic from the same micro theme. Hard power versus soft power. You have to think like this. For any leader or any warrior or any king who has made any change, any lasting change in the world, or shifted the world in some way or the other, who was the guiding force behind that person? Was it another warrior? Was it a poet / philosopher / mentor? And what were the fundas of the mentor? This is people who are joining and who are already part of Smash Essay. This is what we'll do tomorrow. We'll write these things down so that when this essay topic or something like this comes, you're not blank. The easiest thing is you can explain the tension as a definition paragraph. You'll not write something so trivial that people will not give you marks. You'll write something ki yaar ye tension hai. This is the crux of the problem. Okay, so let me just tell you what it is. We believe that people who write laws, they govern the action. No, people who make you think, make you have a vision, make you have a dream, they make you imagine a society or a place where this is possible. That prompts you to write a particular law or put a particular thing in place so that that utopia is possible. Okay? Most of us will look only at the first order effect. I want to make this, let's say I don't agree with this line and I say, no, poets have nothing to do with legislations. It's the ruler. Because I see ruler or I see a democracy or I see a PM making a law. No, this guy has a vision, right? He might have read someone like Gandhi. When he did all those things that he did after coming to India, he had read Tolstoy. For Gandhi, Tolstoy was a poet. Tolstoy had inspired Gandhi of the values that he lived when he faced a crisis of conscience, right? And which Gandhi first deployed in Africa, and that was a Tolstoy farm in Africa. Once he deployed that successfully, then he came to India, applied principles of ahimsa and tyag on top of it to make it contextual to Indian subcontinent. And then he made his own law, which is the law of ahimsa. He made a law for the common people that this is how you revolt in the face of atrocity to the Brits, right? So you can say that a poet inspired Gandhi, who then acted as a poet for the Indians, who acted as a poet for the leaders who you see, Nehru, other people who were inspired by Gandhian thought and whatever laws that they finally came up with, including Abhi Tak Gandhi reverberates in our thoughts, right? It's inspired, the genesis are here. आपने और पढ़ा होगा तो टॉल्स्टॉय के नीचे भी जा सकते हो. But now you understand, you can defend your essay like this. The only antithesis or the only counterfactual point here is it takes time. So when you have a paucity of time, then you apply brute force. Then sometimes legislations are done just to avoid that, like just to have a band-aid solution to it. But that's never a lasting change. So this is a true statement, जब हम इसकी बात करेंगे, the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. You can tell me, you can contest the statement and say, no, I just killed the enemy and everyone. But then I'll say, no, but the ideas live forever. So if you haven't killed the idea of rebellion or that root cause of rebellion, then you're just waiting maybe maximum a decade before which everything reverses, and it will come with such a bad force that तुम्हारी पूरी foundation उड़ के निकल जाएगी. So it's just the time element which is the negotiation factor here, right? You want instant gratification, you go for the kill. You want a long-standing, definite change in any society, work at the grassroots level. There's another, there are African proverbs which say that change the soil and you will change the vegetation, or you can keep working on the superficial layer, or you can keep working and trimming the plant and flowers and whatever on the surface level. But if you can make enough apparatus level changes ki soil hi badal jaye niche se, then you can get whatever vegetation you want, right? Once you understand the core of this force versus influence topic, the heart of this, then you can apply this in any dimension, in any current affairs that you would have read, in any environmental topic, where you give more time and do things right, you get lasting changes. For whatever reason, if you do not have time but you want to change, then force needs to be applied right here, right now. But know that it has its own constraint. Environment, maybe we see the same thing, right? Lands which are fallow and which are almost done for, which people just say these are barren lands, right? You have permaculture. You have techniques of permaculture, wherein that very land becomes fertile. It takes a while, probably a decade, something like that, but it starts bearing amazing fruits and vegetables and whatnot. And you have so many cases in India and Bahar to prove your case. So you take a topic, a tension which is so meta, which is so abstract, which is force versus influence, which is hard power versus soft power, which is change right here, right now, but untenable, versus a long-term change which can run deep. And then once you understand, when you put a definition for this, then you can have all the examples from any, I mean, people who are watching, give me examples from history which you remember, wherein something, जैसे जीजाबाई का example था, wherein some, you have Baram Khan examples, I think for Akbar. Every great ruler has had a great mentor. So it's like very simple. Think of these things. Every great ruler was inspired by a philosopher. You have this great philosopher, German philosopher Nietzsche, right? He was inspired by Dostoevsky. In one of his books, I think he said that the only psychologist worth reading is Dostoevsky. Psychologist. He's credited him to be like the greatest psychologist ever. This is Friedrich Nietzsche, who himself is a great philosopher. And when you see this chain, then you understand that poets or visionaries or people who can dream, they inspire people who can execute on the ground. So this is one level of answer writing for your essay, which gives a lot of depth. Now we come to the third one. Same micro theme, third topic. This is empires of the future will be the empires of the mind. Chanakya for Chandragupta Maurya is also the mentor, right? And because you mentioned Chanakya, and because we talked about Gandhi, how Gandhi was the poet, and let's say Nehru, Sardar Patel, and other people were the rulers or the leaders, you can also write in your essay what are the qualities that the poet or the mentor or the subtle force का जो wielder है उसको होनी चाहिए. He should be exemplifying the wisdom to the core. He has a hard job. Gandhi had a very hard job. He had to walk the talk. You see, Gandhi knew that in this country where morals get to be down on and off, and where the opposition, the Brits, have a brute force, to win against them in long term, I have to walk the talk, so that whenever these people, whenever their chips are down, whenever the Aam Aadmi of India is like, dude, I can't take the beating, I can't have this slap on one face and take, I'll forward the other. Gandhi has to lead by action. Not just that, he then has to write a lot. He came out with his own autobiography, which is, how many of us can write our vulnerabilities out in the paper that publicly? But Gandhi did that. And that is why he inspired millions in that era. You can obviously have difference in opinions with this versus that. And you can say, no, I'll go for Bhagat Singh, but read Bhagat Singh even more. Read the level of rebellion he had, people who influenced him. So you will get to know the poets on both sides of the ecosystem. The moment you start reading like this, or start thinking like this, or brainstorming like this, your essay writing will flow. You do not need any flowery language. You do not need, high level words. You just need to have very simple, clean thought. And धीरे धीरे करते करते your essay will unfold. Because obvious questions will come next. Okay, fine. You need a soft power. You need an influential person to guide the gross acts. How should this life be lived? Okay, this life has to be lived because he has to stand for the principles. He has to walk the talk, etc., etc. Okay, cool. Is it easy? Is it difficult? How should the society be? Are we living in a society where this is possible or not? I mean, you can say, no, it's not possible now. Then you can finally have a forward-looking conclusion that, we need to ensure systems are in place, education is in the right way, critical thinking is put in the society, we are able to challenge. And all these things will just come automatically, and all examples will come automatically to you. Okay. Now we go to this topic. Empire of the future will be the empires of the mind. Tell me, what do you think about it? सबसे पहले तो whenever a topic comes, and if you want mains, when you're preparing for yourself घर पे बैठ के, write the most raw thought which comes to your mind. Okay, that thought will not make it to the essay, the final, whatever your essay would be, but पहले जान तो लो कि how do you think? Guys, जो भी लोग YouTube पे हैं, 2 लाइन डाल दो यार. Empires of the future will be the empires of the mind. What does it make you think? This is the only reason why I do not do free classes on YouTube, because I almost hate monologues. So if I can't see you, I cannot like tweak up my difficulty level or make it easy or difficult. If I don't know if this is making sense to you or not, I mean, I might as well just record the video and put it on the channel. So I'll give 30 seconds. Tell me what's the first thought which comes to your mind when you see this topic. Empire of the future will be the empire of the mind. What do you think? And given that we live in the AI era, what does a default mind thinks? We live in the era of tech, right? What does come? Empires investing in tech will rule the world. Correct. AI. What else? I'll give you a hint. Understand, this is from the same micro theme, by the way. And this statement is not written in the post AI era. This is an old statement. Empires of the future. Imagine this statement would be written in 1500 AD. And someone would say that empire of the future will be the empire of the mind. What would he mean by that? Okay, Yoda. That's an interesting perspective that as we progress more, we're moving away from physical labor to critical thinking, outsourcing physical labor. Okay. I'll give you a hint. Okay, think like this. This statement was given 500 years before 2026. No AI. क्या चल रहा होगा उस वक्त that people will talk like this? थोड़ा, if you challenge yourself, you'll be able to become a better thinker. Wisdom will rule the world. Exactly. This wisdom slash strategy slash, these kind of things. You know the example. Tell me, how many of you remember when Britishers they gained control over India? कितने अंग्रेज 1857 से पहले, when the first mutiny happened, कितनी अंग्रेज थे soldiers और कितने Indians थे? Tell me. In the army, in the British army, how many? What was the ratio, if anyone remembers? No one. You know the policies of Britishers, right? How they ruled India, right? Divide and rule. क्या क्या policies थी? चलो history किसी को पता है तो tell me what are the policies they used to govern or to snatch the kingdoms away from the rulers. You will list down and you will see the policies of annexations were all figment of imagination. Someone thought through something. Someone made the rulers sign one agreement over the other. Someone forced them to sign because they collected the neighborhood kings and made the pressure feel very, very bad. Right? Krishna's policy in Mahabharata. This is not a futuristic thing. This always has been the case. So this is your X factor for this essay. Once you have proved this point that empire of the future will be the empire of the mind, आपका twist, आपका Uno reverse ये आएगा. That has always been the case. It is not just a tech thing. It's not just a tool. This has always been the case, which proves the point that the subtler influence को mind influence समझो. The subtler always governs the gross. The subtle thing, your mind, your strategy will always govern the person, the brawn. ठीक है? Pen is mightier than the sword जो बोलते हैं वो ऐसे ही नहीं बोलते यार. That doesn't mean, see, the literal implication of pen is mightier than the sword is कि someone is writing a newspaper article. Okay, and so he's doing propaganda, and that person who's in power will be defeated. You can almost think of it as a very loser case because more often than not we see that happening. Correct? So that will not justify your point. What's influence here is the power of mind. Pen is mightier than a sword because pen can get diplomatic allies faster. Right? Pen can convince people. Words can harm. Words can heal. Words can play with your mind. Right? You have so many examples from the history where a losing kingdom reached out for help and he got help. Or where, this, right? I mean, the revolution which came in Europe, right? The Protestant Revolution. Martin Luther, this famous monk, this famous German monk. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's the only guy who excommunicated a pope. Can you understand how big a deal that is? Martin Luther said that बहुत अय्याशी होगी भैया Christian church की. You are selling indulgences like it's no one's business. And Gutenberg press had come, right? So now this guy can print his pamphlets and distribute them. So this is his pen working. Not just that, he used the power of rhetoric there and also spread some lies. Okay, whatever, Chanakya would be so happy to understand how Martin Luther worked. But net, he used Sam, Dan, Dand, Bhed. By the way, that's the Kautilya or that's the Chanakya's philosophy, which you can quote in such essays. Sam, which is diplomacy. Dan, which is financial incentive. Bhed, I think, is some kind of a, maybe not verbal subterfuge, but some kind of a, I think, divide and rule. Basically, जो तुम्हारा opposite दुश्मन है उसके बीच में कुछ among the people create factions. So that is bhed. And Dand, you always know, is the last force, is the brute force. So Chanakya used to prefer the first three. ये तो बोलने में it forms like a good staccato and rhythm. So Sam, Dan, Dand, Bhed ऐसे बोलते हैं. But otherwise, Chanakya said, prefer the first three. If nothing, use the brute force power. In fact, you know what? in some circles it would be bad if it's considered bad if I have to use power over you. See, if I have to put out a gun and shoot you, तो फिर क्या ही बात है, right? Then you anyway didn't have a chance. So the X factor is that, you know, मेरे खड़े होने से ही या मेरी आर्मी के स्टैंडिंग होने से you understand that it's futile to go on war with me. That's the highest kind of command that one kingdom can have on another. Okay, anyway, so Chanakya, we were at, I don't know how Chanakya came, but I'll come back to that. Anyway, so the empires of the future will be the empire of the mind. This is also, you know, deep strategy over tangible power items like this, like army. क्या ये होते थे? Army, gold, right? All these are tangible things. Land, alliances. These are tangible things, and we've seen in history that these also either have been broken or these have been played by someone who played with their mind. How many of you? Okay, a lot of examples, right? So example of Krishna's policies, divide and rule, subsidiary alliance, yeah, doctrine of lapse. So all these things were put in force to ensure that without a blood loss, we annex. When Britishers were in India, I think the ratio before the mutiny was very low. I think it was 1:10 or even lower than that. That's the kind of influence they had over the Indians. That Indians were being governed by Indians themselves because of certain policies which Brits were very good at. Okay. Now we come to the last topic from this micro theme. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. I think this came last year. How many of you here were there and you attempted this question? Is there anyone who attempted this question? Either in the actual paper or while you're attempting khud se? This question, the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. The core tension which a leader, put yourself in the shoes of the leader, the core tension which you face is that I want a certain victory. I want a victory which is definite, wherein I know that the rebellion is crushed and the guy cannot raise any army any further. It's blown to smithereens, if it could be, right? It's just completely devastated. And we know from history and from the stories that ideas live beyond the tangible destruction. Ideas find a way. You have poets, you have bards, you have writers who just spread the atrocious acts of a certain kingdom over the other. So even if I succeed in annihilating this kingdom or this society or this individual, it'll come back to bite me in ways and place where I wouldn't even imagine. Okay. And so the supreme art of war, and I think this is a statement by Sun Tzu, the Chinese governor, that the highest victory is when the fight never happens. That when the prospect of when one of these two things happen. One, when the prospect of going to war with me is so bleak, is so bad that you decide कि यार कोई point नहीं है, let me just surrender. ठीक है? Or my aura and my influence and my diplomacy is so amazing that I make you believe that it's in your best interest to align with me and we grow together. The first statement is when you are afraid of me because you know the alliances I have, or you know my power and you know my strength. Okay, you still might wait for the future where I feel weak or where I fell off the grace, and then you can come and command over or rule over me. But the second one, where you grow together, is when I am the best leader. If I am the best leader and I have a win-win, I have a double thank you moment, I have a double shake hand moment for you, I have a win-win scenario why we should collaborate. I have all ways of telling you, hey, diplomatically also it makes sense, economically also it makes sense. Whatever is the flavor of that century, it makes sense for us to be natural allies. And I win over you. And I win over our minor differences or our old differences. That is when we win. Okay, someone said non-violence of Gandhiji. Yeah, the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. Correct. But in सब में आप एक चीज देख रहे हो. I mean, if you're really clued in for the last 38 minutes, time is the only element here. Temporality is the only element here. If I want to win the war right now, if I do not have the cushion of diplomatic parley, or if I do not have the cushion of someone's wisdom to come and shine and understand that it's better that we work together, then then the supreme art of war doesn't work like that. Okay, फिर आपको दंड वाले पे आना चाहिए, वरना आप आई थिंक चाणक्य की ये जो स्ट्रैटेजी ना, यू कैन यूज दिस इन द आंसर, साम दान भेद, इनमें से यूज एनी, दैट वुड बी द सुप्रीम आर्ट. और लास्ट वाला इज दंड, वो तो ऑब्वियस है, राइट? यू कैन जस्ट क्रश द रिबेलियन. या सप्रेस टू डेटरेंस, visible power versus invisible power, correct. Now is the time when I go and introduce NYQs to you. Okay, so if you've understood that these 4 questions which came across the years are basically the same question, it's the same tension, you need to have the same examples, or thoda bahut upar niche karke you can write the essay. So when you prepare, if you're part of the Smash essay program, I'll make you write the essay in tomorrow's class. If you're not part of our Smash program, and if you're preparing by yourself, or if you've joined anyone else, whatever, make sure these 11 micro themes are prepared to the hilt. These are the only 11 topics that you have to prepare for essays to be able to write 2 convincingly good essays. Okay, you do not have to prepare these things. Think of these as just one-liners which you can use in whatever essay comes this year. This is exactly what happened last year. In 2025 paper, 7 out of 8 essay topics, and I'm not making this up, they came from the stuff that we did in Smash essay classes. You can ask from the students, you can ask even from my free community. We have a letter and spirit community on Telegram and WhatsApp. 7 out of 8 topics we had discussed in the class. Okay, we talked about that. The only topic which I couldn't discuss was truth knows no color. I couldn't imagine that UPSC would give that also. And so what I'm trying to say is that essay paper appears easy because anyone can write 250, 300 sharp words. But beyond that, if you're not dealing with tensions, your essay would come very generic. Okay. Now you can counter me and say, but I've read some of the toppers' copies and they appear to be writing very simpler essays with a lot of examples and all that. I would yield to you, but with 2 exceptions, or with 2 conditions. One, most of these essay topics or essay are written much ahead of their UPSC prep, much earlier. Second, this is a subjective paper. The moment you write a better essay, you will score more. Their essays are at best average. I've seen some of the essays of top 10 rankers and they're not good. Maybe the essay they wrote in the exam was very superlative, but whatever they wrote in their mocks were okay. And aisa hota hai. We see this more often than not. You're not the same person every day, every week, but that day you peak. So it's better that you develop the depth, also the execution of writing. Once you do that, if nothing is left, right, then you can attune your essays accordingly. So now, I hope you're convinced that force versus influence is a tension worth going deeper into. So what I'll do now is, I'll give you quotes. Some of them you already may know, some of them I've already discussed while I was talking through. But these are the quotes you can write. And then there are some of the quotes which are made up quotes. Like, you use Claude judiciously, you'll come up with amazing one-liners which you would wish some thinker would have said, so that you can also credit it to someone and have more weight to your essay. But apna hi naam likh dena. This one is Rosa Parks. Okay, I've learned over the years that when one's mind is made up, fear diminishes. You understand? Fear, which comes from the brute force. Okay, and your mind is made up when you reflect deeper, when you're influenced by some right mentors, when you're influenced by some written word or whatever, an inspired thought, it influences you. When that keeps taking a deeper and deeper shape in your head and heart, then your fear diminishes and then you do acts of courage. Okay, this is Rosa Parks. You can flip it, you can bring in Bhagat Singh, almost pick out this quote, put it on Claude, and Claude se bol ki yaar aur instances batao. The best thing to do with AI systems, and I heavily use Claude for this, is that once you've critically figured out what is the vibe you want to create, what is the argument you want to go with, and that's something you have to do sitting alone or talking with a mentor or writing a lot. Once you've done that, then if you want variants of that, because you do not want cliche arguments, you do not want cliche quotes, then you can use these systems to, because they will mine all the books that you haven't read or you cannot read, and they'll give you those things and you can make 1-pager notes on that. Machiavelli's famous quote, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." This can actually come as an essay topic. Okay? Because this is where the time element is being taken care of by Machiavelli. He says that, If you're loved, do not expect that people will right now, right here answer, or take give heed to your call. They have to be feared. You have to be feared for them to act right now on whatever is your beck and call. Love will carry you longer way, but it'll take time. So if you don't have time, it's better to be feared. Then this is a quote by Peter Drucker. He's, I don't know how many of you know, an MBA guru. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. Again, फोर्स वर्सेस इन्फ्लुएंस. ठीक है, फोर्स हो गया स्ट्रैटेजी और इन्फ्लुएंस हो गया कल्चर. तो ये भी काफी इंटरेस्टिंग कोट है, पीटर ड्रकर, which basically says culture greater than strategy. And I know there have been people who say against this also. Just fine, that's your antithesis. Voltaire's famous quote, and this is like amazingly famous, and those who can make you believe in absurdities can make you commit atrocities. This is influence working in a negative direction. Those who can make you believe in absurdities could be, could be absurdities, matlab real life absurdities bhi. I have seen a PhD candidate writing a blog in which that candidate has written that, you know what, as a normal person, you believe that PhD is going to be like what? Whenever you feel like doing a technical experiment or write a code, you can write that. If you feel like writing prose, you can write your thesis. If you don't even feel like doing any of these two things, you want to read someone's work, you can read someone's work. If you don't feel like working, you can call it a day and not work. So these four apparent freedoms are available to you as long as you're pursuing PhD in a subject you love. But the moment you start doing a PhD, you realize this is like that sunshine which kind of rarely comes. That's the absurdity, which people believe that academia is like this. Academia is like the most egalitarian system out there. And I don't know how many of you have friends in academia who've been disgruntled or who've been disillusioned by it. They'll tell you what lies otherwise. So this is, I've seen this quote used by a disgruntled PhD candidate as well. And you can use this quote very well in any of the political or historical system where you want to point out that any kind of blind faith, unquestioned belief system, a societal leaf inflicted bad thing, which has carried on for centuries, which just seeps in because it's a normal day thing, which you don't trivialize, you just let it be, makes you, commit atrocities which you would never imagine that you are capable of. A lot of stuff can be said on this. Okay. Then this is from pop culture, and out of the 12 people now on the system, tell me from which movie is this? He who controls the spice controls the universe. Which movie is this line from? He who controls the spice controls the universe. How many of you have watched Dune, the movie? This is from that. So you will see in any movie, any sci-fi movie or otherwise, the lead or the antagonist, one of these two guys will be given amazing quotes. Like if you watch Game of Thrones, and when Joffrey, I think, tells Tywin Lannister that, I am the king, and then this guy goes and says, any king who has to say that he's the king is no true king. Okay, and or there's a dialogue between Peter Dinklage के character का नाम Tyrion था शायद, and this another guy, and there's a talk about where do you think true power resides? Is it in the hands of the king, the priest, or the guy who's actually wielding the sword? And it's a very interesting puzzle. The knight who's actually wielding the sword has the brute power, but he cannot exercise his power on the king or the minister or the priest, right? And so that thing develops from there onwards. So you will really understand what it really means. This force versus influence is a micro theme which UPSC wants you to master, because the more you master it, you will realize how deeply entwined these things are together. What appears on the first degree is not actually the thing that governs the reality of the world. Okay? Tabhi tumhara deep state actors, people who you do not know, they come into picture. But the moment they get exposed to the picture, they lose the power. So एक बहुत interesting quote है, which says that rivers carve canyons not by force but by refusing to stop. It's a very deep quote. And the tension here is the power of sudden blow versus the power of patient, unnoticed pressure. Just sit through these quotes. and you will understand a lot about essay writing, actually essay writing on the paper. This is nothing abstract now, everything is out there to you, force versus influence. No one can, I won't say no one can teach you better, but I would say no one can curate and facilitate better. If you have to do it by yourself, if you have to go deeper by yourself, now go and spend the rest of the day on the same note. Okay? These all, by the way, can be NYQs. Armies win battle, but language wins centuries. तो क्या होता है, civilizational changes जो impact होते हैं, they are these things, right? We say about Lord Macaulay and the minutes of education, whatever he effectuated the change with, that still haunts the Indian education system. Don't we say that? Britishers have left India long ago, but we still have the remnants of the white man's psyche. That is the empire of mind, long before established. So if you have to truly liberate yourself, you have to liberate yourself from these remnants of an unquestioned idea that has gotten into your psyche, collective psyche. And you've like so many thinkers and rebellions and revolutionaries. I think Franz Fanon was one guy who said that, your colonized mind is harming you more. You're wearing a white mask. You're black inside, but you're wearing a white mask. You want to appear like your colonized people, or the people who colonize you. You want to appear in their shadows. You want to appear like who they were. Sometimes you fight a war with person who's kind of aggrieved you, and you end up fighting the war with so much shiddat that you transmute yourself to win the war, to become like him or her, and then you can't flip back, right? And that was the real battle that guy was playing. Imagine, that's a deep strategy, that I'll go to this country or to this society, I'll change the language, I'll change what permissible it is to wear or not. We read about so much about Victorian morality. What is Victorian morality? Koi bataye yahan pe? Think of the paintings which were made in India before a certain era and paintings which were made in Britain. Just compare these two things. Understand the morality, understand the culture, the societal changes which got inflicted in India because of incoming of Brits. Not just the brute power that you see, but also the way we carry ourselves in public. What's considered elite, what's not, right? Which UPSC prep reflects this quote? Yeah, you can say UPSC prep reflects this quote. Or people, abhi bolte na, IRTS is like the services, is the IS of the railways. And it's for the right reason. You look at the establishments they have, look at the bungalows, the power, the insignias they run with. ये सब चीजें will tell you that this is where this thing plays with your psyche. So, point I'm trying to tell you is that the more you marinate yourself in these micro themes, okay, the better your answer is going to be. And then whatever you write, you show it back to us. And then we'll correct your grammars, or we'll correct and give you better examples to prove the point. But sabse pehle, you need to have those right dimensions, and within those dimensions, the right arguments. What is it that you want to say? How deeply have you felt the corrosive influence or the positive influence? You have to go deep within. Then you have to go outside in the history or society or negotiations which are happening now or in past, where you see these things playing out. How have these things unfolded in future? How has one generation impacted the other generation and then impacted the other generation? When someone had to break free from the cudgels, it is here that you will write Rabindranath Tagore's Gitanjali ki poem, where the mind is without fear. Can someone just rehash it from Google, but likh ke batao? I think poem number 36 in Gitanjali, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where the spirit breaks free from the old, some customs. I don't remember it, but it's a great poem. That's how leaders should be. That's how they should inspire you, right? So then you'll write, a part of your essay would be, once you know this, and once a society figures that they're still reeling under the subjugation of mind, which is impacting their behavior long after the aggressor has already gone, what do they do now? How do you cleanse your systems now? What is a non-negotiable now? And then you would see something of that sort happening in India. Maybe some of the policies which you cannot appreciate right now, but they are being put in place so that in 10 years time from now, something will change. Or if the government is not doing something right, and if there are, protests around, what is it that they're protesting? What is it at the fundamental core that they want to change? Because they've read history, they fear about a rehash of history happening again and again, so they want to protect the future generation. Kya hai? You can only effectively answer any of these 4 essays once you understand the force versus influence theme at this level. Okay, another quote which could be your NYQ. The throne is visible so that the real power need not be. I think I told you already. Coins carry the face of the king, but the markets decide his worth. This is, you know what this is? Top down leadership versus bottoms up leadership. Samajho? Guys, am I able to make sense? You guys are able to write notes. See, the whole thing is that this live is not for me to have a monologue. If this is impacting your essay preparation, if this really gave you a new food for thought or a fodder that you can write in your essay right now, then it's useful for you. Otherwise, junk it. Do not get overwhelmed by these videos. This should make sense to you. And I guarantee this, whoever understands these things in the depth and make this depth their own, they'll score 140. 140 छोड़ो यार, 160 plus आना चाहिए. इसके beyond कुछ नहीं है. There is no deeper level that you can think through in this micro theme. I'd be happy, not to be proven wrong, but I'd be happy to add more dimensions to my thinking as well. And I keep learning from you guys, and I keep learning from whatever essays you write, and I get to check or I get to review with you. But this is the micro theme, the first micro theme. These are the 4 topics that have come, and there is not much else left in terms of the depth to which you have to think. And the reasons why I'm giving you these, these quotes or these whatever one-liners is for 2 reasons. One of these can come in your essay. Closest relative of these can come in your essay. Or, yeah, what I've seen is sometimes one of these lines click with you and they stay in your heart. Like if I say, we can govern a man's head with a law, but we can only govern his heart with a story. So sometimes one of these things will stick to you. Okay. The loudest noise in the room rarely owns the room, or the loudest voice in the room rarely owns the room. You will understand this. The loudest voice, matlab the visible power, it rarely owns the room. ये सब चीजें you will understand, and you will be able to reproduce some of them in your essay paper, or you will be able to understand the depth of this micro theme and the importance you need to give to this study. I think that would be enough now. I wanted to cover at least 2 more micro themes in this free class, discovery versus creation. But what we'll do, and you guys can come tomorrow 11 a.m. at the Civilsdaily office. You can sit right in front of me. That's the first class which I'm going to do for free. It's part of the Smash Essay program. I'll cover this again in depth, in much more depth. I'll give you some writing assignment. It'll be a 2-hour class, and I'll take these 2 sessions, these 2 micro themes as well. So what we did with force versus influence, we'll do this with discovery versus creation and intuition versus logic. And as I navigate through these think intentions micro theme, what I'm trying to tell you is that there are 2 desires, 2 wants. Like you want to have the power, you want to show the power, and you also want the power to effectuate a long-lasting change. ये दोनों नहीं हो सकता एक साथ. If I show you the power, if I show you and give you my cards that this is how I'm going to rule you, you're going to rebel against that. But if I don't show you, मेरी ego को satisfaction नहीं मिलेगा. So if I have to govern you, I have to act behind the curtain. If I do that, I will govern you, but I'll not get the credit. This is the tension between 2 desires, 2 wants, which is at display when you write essays. And truly, honestly, your better examples will come when you understand this in depth. History is replete with examples. We'll give you the examples closer to the mains paper, because examples are the easiest thing to get. We'll give you examples, quotes, philosophers, whatever you want, closest to the mains paper. Honestly, that is the easiest thing. You can get yourself these things from Claude yourself. That's not a big deal. Okay, understand that this thinking, this critical thinking is the biggest deal. Cool. So tomorrow at 11 a.m., if you can come physically, all the better. Smash Essay students are anyway invited. We'll discuss these 2 micro themes and we'll do some assignments on this one. So I'll check your paragraphs on this and we'll see class में कितना improvement हो पाते हैं. Thank you for coming in. This was the only NYQ session for essay. I'll see you in the class tomorrow.